I could spend quite a long time talking about this next slide. I really only want to introduce to you the names of the planes and bodies and give you an approximate idea of what they are and how they relate to each other. So, on the physical plane, we have a lower physical and an upper physical plane. And the lower physical plane is our physical body. And then we have an etheric body or etheric double, the first layer of our aura that represents the upper physical plane. Then comes the first fully non-physical plane, which is the astral or emotional plane, also sometimes called the plane of desire, and we have a body on that level. Strictly speaking, I think that we should have a lower and a higher version on this level too, but the difference is not talked about in theosophical literature as far as I've seen. On the mental plane, the next higher beyond the astral, each plane becomes more subtle, less connected to time, less material, more spiritual. Excuse me. On the lower mental plane, we have a mental body, which is the seat of our personality. And on the upper level of the mental plane, we have a causal body, which roughly is equivalent to what is normally called the soul in many spiritual and religious contexts. Then we have planes that are less talked about in theosophical literature. The intuitional or Buddhic plane, same body. What's meant by intuition is two things: unity consciousness and the ability to know things more or less instantly. It takes a while in the physical body to dig up an old memory. When we're in the astral body, that process is speeded up. Even more so in the mental body, when we're separated from the physical. And then at the intuitional level, there can be a feeling of instantaneous knowledge or understanding. The spiritual, sometimes also called Atmic or Atman or Nirvanic, this is the level that the masters work from. Again, not much is spoken about with these levels. Then the monadic level, the highest self level that I mentioned earlier. And then the divine, or sometimes called the logoic level, representing the highest level of achievement, oneness with the divine. The significant thing about this chart is, for our purpose in the Theosophical Society and in our teachings, it is said that the 6th and 7th levels are present, but not a part of our awareness, and that the real field of human evolution is on the first 5 planes: physical, astral, mental, intuitional, and spiritual. Now, I also mentioned something in an earlier session about how the bodies develop roughly in connection with the chakras, and this is simply the list that I brought forward to you then. Embodiment, the feeling of being in a body, sense contact with the environment at the plane, movement on that plane, empathy in order to perceive and respond to the beings of that plane, understand their nature, communication, usually nonverbal, with such beings. The synthesis that brings everything together into a complete view of what happens on that plane, and the level of transcendence where we leave behind the perceptual biases of that plane. I had to run quite fast to get to St. Michael's house and back, so I think I'm recovering a little from that. This slide is here because I wanted to make sure that you had access to it, that you had a chance to see it, because I had just given it to you from my head. It doesn't play a direct role in the meditation that we'll be doing, but we might want to come back to it with questions later. So here's what I propose to do. I'm going to read a series of statements that represent what I believe to be the ladders that I use when I describe this part of our presentation. So the first is the ladder of powers and laws that is climbed by somebody on the identity, transcendence, or mystical path. And then there's a ladder of beings and needs that is climbed by the people on the empath path, the union path. And then there's a ladder of bodies and planes that is climbed by somebody on the seer path, the integrated path. What I am trying to do here is give you some idea of what a spiritual path for each of these types might be. So I'm using the bodies and the planes as the basis for this, and each one that I will be reading to you will relate to a physical plane, astral emotional plane, mental plane, and so on. And the idea is that we're moving into ever more expansive states of consciousness and more expansive forms of service at each of these levels. So, I don't know if you'll have the experience within yourself of an expanded state of consciousness as I move through them. I really just want you to feel the energy behind them, if you can. I did this for an English language audience as a kind of experiment a number of months ago, and was quite surprised at the results, where some of the people experienced strong chills when certain of the statements were read that seemed to be an indication of some kind of a deep resonance with that statement, and possibly an indication that that person was on that path. So maybe something like that will light up for you. I imagine that this will take about 15 or 20 minutes, and when we're finished, we'll sit in silence for a little bit. Then there might be questions or sharing, and then I might want to go one step deeper, depending on our time. And if we don't do it now, we can do it at a later stage in the program.